All right, everybody. Welcome back to THI, formerly Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here for another daily drop. And in this drop, we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive on Steve Belichick, North Carolina's new defensive coordinator, and obviously the son of new UNC head coach Bill Belichick. Now, AJ, I want to ask you something before we dive into a little bit of his resume and his past experience. First and foremost, I've got a fun fact for you today. Did you know Steve Belichick, the Bill's son, is not the first Steve Belichick to coach at the University of North Carolina in the football program? Did you know that? Is that a fun fact you were aware of?
Yeah, because I know his dad's name.
Same name.
Yeah. And by the way, do we still call him new coach Bill Belichick?
I think so, because he hasn't played a game yet. I think, you know what I mean?
Because the last stuff I wrote this summer, I started calling him first-year head coach. Not new head coach anymore. Because he's gone through spring practice and he's not new anymore.
Yeah.
He's been here 7 months now.
See, it's a good point.
I wonder what the statute of limitations is on being a new head coach or a new anything.
I always do it by,
if he was a cashier. Look at our new cashier here at Dollar General.
I consider him new. My opinion, he's still new until he coaches his first game. That's how in terms of, I'm going to say new head coach, but you make a good point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that's the wrong viewpoint. That's a good point. I don't know. Get involved in the comments.
I mean, he is new, but from a writing an article standpoint, to me, he's now first-year head coach, and he'll be first-year head coach until the end of the season.
That's a fair point, too. That's probably a better way to put it. We're going to dive into his NFL history, a little bit of his history at Washington, and then we'll talk a little bit later about maybe what it means for North Carolina and maybe what you can expect from him as the DC here. But I want to just circle back to him getting hired, because I remember the process. There was all these rumors floating around that we've talked about before of, oh, yeah, Bill Belichick's going to come, but there's going to be something in his contract about his son Steve's going to have to be the coach in waiting and all this stuff that just wasn't true. But all that in mind, putting yourself back in that kind of time period when all these rumors were swirling and Bill Belichick get hired and then he's announcing his staff, were you surprised that Steve Belichick was brought in? Because I think on the surface, no, I don't think we should be surprised when you consider the connection there. But when you could sit there and say, when you look at Bill Belichick and the history he has and the coaches he's had under him and everything like that, I mean, there were a lot of different avenues I think someone as experienced as Bill Belichick could have gone down on the defensive coordinator side. And to go with your son, I think is fair. And I think he's someone who deserves a shot for sure here at North Carolina. But were you at all surprised by that looking back? Or is it just kind of like, yeah, maybe we kind of expected when you look at it?
He did it with the Patriots.
Yeah.
He had both his sons working for him there, and both are working for him now. What was interesting is that so many incorrect reports went out there saying, well, he's trying to work out the deal to get his son as coach in waiting and all that kind of stuff. And I can say that every source I've talked to, including people who were part of making those agreements, said that was not the case. And a few of us talked to somebody not long after his introductory press conference. You remember this. A few of us talked to somebody who knows about every detail of the contract, and they said no. At the time, they weren't even sure his son would even be on the staff. It hadn't really come up. Now, the expectation, we were told at the time, was he'll be a candidate and probably will, but nothing was talked about head coach in waiting. North Carolina doesn't do the head coach in waiting thing. Certainly under the leadership of Bubba Cunningham, doesn't believe in it generally, and most don't. And usually it doesn't work. Very few times it has worked in the past. I know Mac Brown used to talk about, he was asked about, what did you do a head coach in waiting? Well, he did that at Texas, and it was a disaster. There are very few places I could think of where it's worked. It worked with Michigan State and Tom Izzo, head coach in waiting for Judd Heathcote. I think Matt Painter did the same thing at Purdue under Gene Cady, and it worked really well there. But no, that, as far as I know, it could turn out to be that he's the next head coach. But every source I talked to and people who absolutely know, because they were part of the contract, said that's not the case. So when he was hired, no, I wasn't surprised. And I actually thought it was a good hire because his son does have a year in college, but he needs to be comfortable with people he's with, because he was entering into a situation that was vastly uncomfortable. that was atypical from what he was used to being in college, all the things that go with college. Even though his son had 1 year coaching at Washington, he still was familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And he had coaches that worked under him at Washington that had been in college for a long time. They brought one of them with them to North Carolina, DB coach who's done very, very well recruiting. He ended up, that's why Thad Dixon is there now, and so on. So, no, I'm not surprised. I think it was a good move. I like the way the staff filled out. I like the fact that it was frustrating at first, Jacob, that they weren't filling up the staff quickly because, like, God, we still got to be in staff alert. But it was actually very wise. He didn't just fire at fish in a barrel and say, that's my staff, like a lot of coaches do. It's Bill Belichick. He was operating from a position of strength, and he could sit back and say, okay, I'll take this guy now. Mm-hmm. And go through the process. All right, I'll take this guy now. Mm-hmm. So I think North Carolina wins, and I think having his son there is part of the selling point because I think there's a lot of intrigue with him.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think there is a lot of intrigue about him. And now I want to dive into his resume, starting with his NFL experience, essentially where he got started. So I'm going to run through that real quick, and then we'll discuss that, and we'll move on to Washington after that. But for those who don't know, this is an interesting fact too, he's a lacrosse player and long snapper at Rutgers. So he does have that, obviously some experience playing in college and obviously the lacrosse connection too, which is something that gets tossed around with Bill Belichick a lot as well. But his coaching tenure started in 2012 with the New England Patriots. He was hired as a defensive assistant, obviously under his dad, Bill Belichick, there as well. Contributed to the team's defensive strategies during a period that included a Super Bowl victory in 2015. And obviously that's where it kind of started, gained a lot of foundational experience in the NFL, defensive schemes, player development, and obviously in his first, winning a Super Bowl in 2015 as well. Actually ended up winning 3 Super Bowls, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then 2016, he's promoted to the safeties coach, where he was from 2016 to 2018 with the Patriots, played a key role in the Patriots defense during the Super Bowl wins in 2017 and 2018, with 2018 wins seeing the defense hold the LA Rams to a record low 3 points in the Super Bowl. Just to toss a couple names out, players like Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung is another one that you might recognize, and obviously a very strong defensive backfield with the success they had there. Now, a couple more promotions that he received. New England Patriots 2019, he became the defensive backs coach, led the secondary to lead the NFL in total defense and scoring defense in 2019. Coach cornerback like Stephen Gilmore as well. He was the AP NFL Defensive Player of the Year that year. So again, a lot of player development, some guys you can kind of look at and say, yeah, some very impressive players that have played underneath him. And this is the final stint he had with the Patriots, 2020 to 2023. He was outside linebackers coach and defensive play caller. And under his leadership, listen to these stats. I think these are very interesting. The Patriots defense ranked highly in 2023, 3rd in opponent yards per play and 6th in total defense in the NFL, giving up just 301.6 yards per game. 2022, the Patriots were 5th in opponent yards per game. And going back a little bit to 2021, they were 10th in opponent yards per play. So looking at that, you've got a guy started young, got to, be on the staff under his dad, who's, one of, if not the most successful NFL coach and famous NFL coaches of all time. And you can see the kind of gradual build up there of being successful early on, getting promoted to different positions, eventually becoming the defensive play caller starting in 2020 and excelling in that role for the most part, like I mentioned with some of those stats. So AJ, when you look at the resume there for a guy that, is only 38 years old at the time of recording, starting back in 2012 like he did, I mean, it's just 13 years ago, and is a guy that spent 11 years essentially in the NFL. I mean, that is a ton of experience for a young guy that obviously comes from a family with very successful coaching roots. So when you look at the NFL experience there, we'll talk about maybe how it translated to college last year with Washington. But I don't think there's any way you can look at that resume right there and say, man, that's pretty dang impressive, especially for a kid who essentially graduated from Rutgers in 2011 and went straight into coaching in the NFL in 2012.
Every kid they recruit wants to play in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So they have a defensive coordinator that knows exactly what it takes to not just get to the NFL, but stick in the NFL. He knows every nook and cranny and nuance of what is required. because so much of it is not your specs, your physique. So much of it is how much do you love football. I think that's what's interesting about this staff. And Steve Belichick, it's going to be very interesting to watch his role in the recruitment and how much we hear kids talk about him over the next couple of years once they see his defense in play. Because before, hey, what do you think of Gene Chizik, or what do you think of Jeff Collins, or whatever the case may be, Jay Bateman, whoever's defense it was? We're going to start asking kids more and more about Steve Belichick, and he understands that love of football, passion for football, is a big part of this process, because guys don't last. No matter how much money you're making, it's hard to last and be really good if you don't love it. Football is the kind of sport that not on game days, it's kind of hard to love sometimes. A lot of guys that have played are very, very talented. You wonder, man, how'd that guy not make it? There's so many 4-star, 5-star busts, right? Because they didn't love football. And there's so many 3-stars and 2-stars who become NFL players. A guy like him could see who they are. He can read who they are. And I think that's one of the interesting things about Will Hardy being someone we talked to in June at the Keenan Football Center, and he's one of the representatives in Charlotte next week at the ACC Media Days. There's a love of football there. So it elevates him as a player, and they see it. I mean, he's a Belichick kind of guy. When you say a Belichick kind of guy, you're not talking about he's got all the specs. You're talking about some of the other aspects of the game that help make somebody really good. And I think that's one of the great things about having him in the program right now. And he's going to learn more about college and coaching in college and adjusting to the Dabo Sweeneys of the world and adjusting to the other teams that are on the schedule. And with the personnel that he has, he's not inheriting a team that was in the national championship game when he took over at Washington as a defensive coordinator and actually improved them on that side of the ball. So I love all those things about it. From the standpoint of all the newness that we get to cover, Jacob, all the new things we get to look for, all the tidbits of how this thing moves forward that we get to pull out, isolate, maybe turn into a daily drop, are going to be fascinating. And it's not just with Dad. It's with Steve, and it's with his brother too. But Steve is in charge of that defense. And nothing has underachieved more in the ACC in football the last quarter century than North Carolina's defense. Rarely has the production across the board met the talent level on the field. Now you have a guy there that might be able to do it, especially with his dad there on hand, especially with the other people that he has there. We will see. But I think North Carolina fans should be very excited. A lot of people are saying, I will believe in Bill Belichick if the defense is good, right? How many times do you hear that and read that?
God, all the time. And I don't blame him either.
And a lot of people are like, well, it's just his son. It's nepotism. What does he know? They're the very same people that when we did the podcast about Hubert Davis working with Team USA, because he could learn from Mark Pope and Nate Oates and those guys, because coaches all learn from one another. They're blasting us saying Hubert spent his whole life around Pat Riley and Dean Smith and Roy Williams. Steve Belichick spent his entire existence under Bill Belichick. Yeah, something's got to rub off, folks.
Yeah.
So I think it's very intriguing. I can't wait. I wish I had 14 sets of eyes. So when I'm at practice, I can watch 14 different things. I'm only going to be able to see so much. I will watch him. I think now, with practice starting soon, he becomes a little more intriguing to me than his dad, because I've kind of gone over his dad a lot. We are kind of what you see is what you get right now. Now, the next layer is coordinators. And we'll talk about Freddie Kitchens and whatnot at some other time. But to me, that's it right there. They have to be good defensively to have the kind of season they need to have, because we don't know if they're going to be spectacular offensively. They don't have a Drake May. They don't have a Sam. I think Gio's pretty good, should be pretty good, and he's one of the representatives at the ACC kickoff next week. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to move the ball. It doesn't mean they're going to hit big plays. They're going to have to get off the field defensively. So far, what we know about his experiences seems like the kind of guy that might run a defense that can get off the field quite a bit.
I agree. And I think we'll focus on his one season stint. He wasn't even there for a year in total. His one season stint at the University of Washington as the defensive coordinator in 2024, because all the NFL resume stuff is great and a lot of success with the Patriots. Again, one of the best dynasties in NFL football ever. So I think some people might look at that and say, well, you did it for the Patriots. So what has he done at the college level? Okay, well, let's look at that. again, 2024 was a defensive coordinator hired in February at Washington, and he significantly improved Washington's defense, moving from 99th nationally in total defense in 2023. Let's remember that 2023 Washington team was still pretty dang good, if those remember that season.
Played the national championship game.
Yeah,
Thaddeus Lewis. Thaddeus Lewis played quite a few snaps that night.
Moved him from 99th in 2023 season to 26th in 2024. And they were also 27th in yards per play allowed. Now, that...
Let me cut in. The 99 defense, the defense ranked 99th, played a Pac-12 schedule. Mm-hmm. Last year, they played a Big Ten schedule. Now, the Big Ten is not very explosive. You can tell me teams like Indiana and Michigan and Ohio State are not explosive. You can tell me that I know that they're not all Iowa.
Yeah, that's
Penn State scores points. There's points in that league, too, and it's a better league. And they were better defensively, and he had guys like Lewis who were all conference, too. So, and Thad Lewis played a position that Steve Belichick has mostly coached. He's been a secondary coach so often in his career. And Thad Lewis goes from a solid player in 23 to all Big Ten in 24. And he has credited Steve Belichick with a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, he's been. You mean Thad Dixon, right? You said Thad
Dixon. Thad Lewis. I'm so sorry.
I knew what you meant.
Sorry, man.
No, I had to say it because I didn't want
people
to.
Why was I thinking Thad? Who's Thad Lewis?
I was trying to think. I was like, is there Thad Lewis? I was like,
how many times did I say Lewis?
A few times, but we'll let it slide here. We all make mistakes out here, AJ.
Wow. Can't, someone's going to call me a dumbass.
Can't bat 1,000, Not everybody bats 1,000 out there. Nobody bats 1,000, actually. So
Shohei Ohtani got out last night.
Yeah, exactly. Man, even the best strike out every once in a while. I knew what you meant, though.
Thad Dixon.
I was trying to prevent the people in the comments saying, who is that? AJ didn't even know the guy's name. Like, I knew you knew who you were talking about. I think we'll get.
I'm just trying to figure out, because that happens sometimes, and I've been really busy.
Oh, I've done it before, too.
So who knows? I was trying to think, is there like a Thad Lewis in the book? But no, there's not.
No, again, we'll give you a pass on that. We knew exactly what you meant. But I think that's the most impressive thing. And maybe not the most impressive thing. It's not where to put it. But I think it's one of the most impressive things on the resume because, again, he joins Washington in February of 2024. He takes the Carolina job in December of 2024. So he's not there very long to begin, 10 months essentially, not even to begin with. But he flips that defense around in the era, like you mentioned, moving over to a new conference, coming off the year that they had. And he essentially moves the defense up, 63 spots from what they were in total defense before. That's super impressive. And that is a situation which I think he could be walking into now at Carolina, where obviously from a Carolina fan perspective, they want the defense to be turned around, a defense that has really, really struggled, as we know and have talked about for years now. This is a Carolina defense that, was 72nd in total defense, I believe, last year in 2024. So even a little bit less than Washington was. So if he can come in and have a similar effect to what he did at Washington, he didn't even have to move him up 60 spots for Carolina to have a pretty dang good defense, but have a similar kind of trajectory that he had at Washington in year one. There's a lot of reasons to believe that this defense in year one under Bill Belichick could be much improved under Steve. So I think that Washington one is very important to highlight because he did it in a quick period of time. He did it in the transfer portal era. And he also did it with a program that was coming off a national championship game appearance. So I think there is a lot to be hopeful for in terms of what Steve Belichick can do in year one. But I also get it, like you just said, AJ, from a Carolina fan's perspective. And I don't blame you at all. There is a lot. I would say a majority of the Carolina fan base out there might really like what Steve Belichick can do on paper, but they're still going to be sitting there saying, I'm going to believe it when I see it because of what they've witnessed in the last.
And I get that. You know why? Look at all they lost from last year's defense. Look at all the experience. How many snaps with Des Evans and with Hester and Ritzy and Eccles and Huzzy and all those guys and Lane. All those guys. I think I said Rucker. Rucker, ton of snaps.
Yeah, came on Rucker as well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was the defense?
Mm-hmm.
Defense should have been so much better than it was. Those guys individually should add up to a defense that should, at the very worst, be in the top 35. Very worst top 35. 70 points to JMU. I don't think anything like that's going to happen now. Of course, could be wrong. This just could be a nepotism hire, and he's been riding the coattails for a while. But I don't think so, because you pointed out the people he coached. You pointed out the areas of the defense he was responsible for that excelled. And you don't win Super Bowls just because you have a great quarterback. People need to understand, he only had Tom Brady. There's so much more that goes to it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a really interesting situation. If he ends up being the coach in waiting, we'll have to wait and see. I think that his dad's going to be there more than a year. I think a lot of the negative Nancy's want to say he's only going to be there a year. They're the same people said he wasn't going to go on the recruiting trail. The same people said he was going to be gone before June 1st because of the $10 million buyout and all that kind of crap or whatever. Or once June 1st hits, he was going to leave. Oh, he's not going to coach a game. I'll believe it if he ever coaches a game. I think he's going to be around. I think he's totally dedicated to getting this right. And if he really wants to turn it over to his son, the only way that's going to happen is if he sticks around and gets it right. Mm. And if his son's defense is a huge reason why. If that's the case, then it makes a lot more sense down the road. Right now, you'd have to have rocks for brains to agree to something like that because it would be too risky. It's not worth 1 year or 2 years of Bill Belichick to then go into something that you agree to now without knowing what it's going to be in a couple of years.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot to like about Steve Belichick's resume as an assistant and a defensive coordinator, but a guy's never been a head coach before. So for Carolina to agree to he can be the head coach. Yeah, well, whatever. It's like, no, they're never going to, it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, but you are right. If Bill Belichick comes in, has a successful program for however many years, and Steve Belichick and his defense is a big part of that, yeah, who knows what kind of conversations might be had in the future. And then maybe, he's a guy in a few years that's very highly sought after because of his success in the NFL and at Washington and at Carolina to go other places and is trying to be, attracted from other schools. So that's I don't want to rule that possibility out, but as of right now, that it is a very far-fetched idea that Steve Belichick's just a coach in waiting. You know what I mean?
Well, the contract has the guarantees the first 3, and you got 5 years or whatever. I can see that playing out, and as his dad gets older and the program gets into a point where it's a well-oiled machine, and his dad doesn't have to massage as much as he's had to do the last 7 months. He and Michael Lombardi, I could see. If they're having a lot of success, his dad's sort of stepping out of some stuff, or maybe not stepping out, but still not giving us a ton of access, but maybe his son starts giving us more access. I know college coaches, I'm not going to say his name, often would let the assistant coaches talk to the TV people at halftime. Just giving them a little bit more. They're the ones that run practices some. They're the ones that do the press conference every once in a while. If it is going to work out that way, it's a perfect way to sort of ease him into some of those things. He's been around it all. He's been around the Boston media. He knows pressure in college. He took over a program that played in the national title game last year. So what's more pressure than that? Trying to fix the defense that got shredded in the title game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Washington one is a glimmer of hope from a Carolina fan perspective. Like, okay, you can do it at Washington. You can come in and turn it around quickly.
There's a little bit of proof in the pudding, right?
Exactly. There's a little bit of proof in the pudding. And that's the reason we want to do this podcast. It wasn't just to focus on the Washington. We wanted to I wanted to dive deeper into his resume a little bit, get to know him a little bit better. Because, again, a lot of people just think, oh, he's, Bill Belichick's son. That's the only reason he was hired. But no, when you actually go look at the resume, look at what he's done from a very young age. Like I said, over 10 years of experience in the NFL, straight out of college, essentially. I mean, that is a fantastic resume and fantastic experience for a guy who's not even 40 yet. So coaching under his dad, new program like Carolina that is hungry for success, talk about being the 33rd NFL team. It probably makes sense to have a guy who has defensive coordinator experience, play calling experience, and position coach experience in the NFL as well. I think the Steve Belichick hire makes a ton of sense, even if he wasn't Bill Belichick's son. So a lot to like about what Steve can do. But again, like you said, we got to wait and see what happens. We don't want to jump the gun too early. This is Carolina. About it. The defense has struggled. We have to keep that in mind.
You got that name. You got a ton of NFL experience in 1 year and a very successful year in college for your defensive coordinator. You got an offensive coordinator who was once an NFL head coach.
Yeah.
So you talk about the NFL thing, which we'll hit on a lot because they said it. So we're going to remember what we do. We judge them based on what they say and what they do.
Exactly.
So we will cover the 33rd NFL team this year to a T as the 33rd NFL team. It is, I'm not going to say his name, but somebody in the media said during the practice that we watched on April 12th, if this is the 33rd team in the NFL, I know he's got the 33rd pick, or he's got the first pick in the NFL next year.
Yeah, that's a fair point right there. That is absolutely a fair point.
We'll see if that tune changes during the course of the year.
You never know, man. You never know. Steve Belichick could be a big reason behind that tune changing eventually. Last question I'll ask you, AJ. got to have the best hair out of any defensive coordinator Carolina's had, right? I was trying to sit here and think before we started. I was like, am I missing somebody maybe? Is there somebody who had a flow like Steve Belichick? I'm not sure there is, AJ.
All right. So when I was at Fox Sports, they wanted me to write a column about Al Groh when he was the head coach of Virginia. You know this story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, Al Groh will never win a national championship at Virginia or anywhere because he wears tassel loafers, right? And the whole joke was that there's a prerequisite to get hired at Virginia and Carolina is you have to own a pair of tassel loafers. I guarantee you Steve Belichick doesn't even know what they are, much less own them.
No chance.
So maybe it's time North Carolina has a guy that doesn't give a crap about tassel loafers running something important in athletics there. You need football guys. You need glass chewers, right?
Yeah, you're right, man.
He's got a look, man.
He does. I love it. He had a mullet. Back, when he was in the NFL. I don't know. It's just long hair now. I want him to bring back the mullet, man. I mean, mullets are making.
I had a friend tell me he looks like the kind of guy that will oversell expensive tires to your mom in the afternoon, and that night drink a 6-pack and watch WWE.
That's what you want, man. That's what you want as your DC, man. It's exactly what you want, especially when you can look at the resume and say it's not some guy that just pulled off the street. You know what I mean? There's a lot of success in his past. So yeah, if you can mix that with some past success in the NFL and college, I think there's a lot to like about what Steve Belichick can do. You know what I mean?
They had a yipper. They got one yipper, a guy who yelled a lot, yipped a lot. Is what the word was called in Jay Bateman. Gene Chizik was a hugger. He was an explainer and a hugger. And then Collins was just on a different planet, man. I like Jeff. I actually enjoyed my dealings with him, but he's giving guys cookie cakes all the time, and he's doing push-ups in practice and throwing them candy bars and stuff. I mean, that worked before him in the past. Didn't really work too much last year. Now maybe it's time for a gruff dude. I had a coach, a lineman, an offensive line coach in high school, had the worst breath in the world, right? And he would get in your face. So do your job, and you don't have to deal with that, right?
God, yeah.
I'm not saying Steve Belichick has bad. I'm just saying you don't want guys in your face.
So it's not a bad coaching tactic, really. Just have really bad breath.
It's a great
did it all. It probably didn't do it on purpose, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
I hope people don't think I was saying that about him. I'm just
no. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
he's a little bit of a gruff guy. So kids don't want gruff dudes in their faces.
I mean, AJ, just a note to Jeff Collins. Maybe Steve Belichick is the new minister of mayhem in Chapel Hill. Well, time will tell, man. Time will tell. Who knows? But a lot to like.
Minister of mayhem. I like Gene. Mm-hmm. Gene's a wonderful man, and I just think it's different styles. Jay Bateman, I know Jay was a little bitter when he left and remained bitter for a while about some things, but he's going on and done his thing. He's had some success in his career, and I don't even know where Jeff is now, but
I don't think Jeff is coaching anywhere. I was actually looking at it this past weekend. I saw his name pop up, and I don't think he's anywhere. Right? He maybe he's an analyst or something somewhere, but from what I've seen, I couldn't find where he was at. It was just former DC at North Carolina.
Well, his family stayed in Atlanta, so I think he knew that. Yeah, that was a one-year deal.
Yeah, and ultimately it was for different reasons, but. Yeah, let us know in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. We want to do this kind of deep dive podcast on him. Just talk a little bit more his background. Why, just him being the son of Bill Belichick is not why he's hired. There's a lot of other reasons why, you bring in a guy like Steve Belichick. That obviously is a reason. Don't get it twisted. But
it comes with a lot of good stuff.
Yes, it comes with a lot of good stuff. Like I said, if Bill Belichick isn't the coach and you brought some other Joe Schmo in, I think you can make a legitimate case that Steve Belichick would be potentially on the list of defensive coordinators when you look at his NFL experience.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So I think that you got to give him some fairness in that. But let us know in the comments. Want to hear what you think about Steve Belichick. Are you excited about what he can do with Carolina's defense, or are you taking that approach, which I don't blame you for, of like, look, I like the resume. I like what he can do. I like what he's done in the NFL and in Washington. But when it comes to Carolina's defense, I got to believe it, see it to believe it. I can understand that perspective as well. So we'll be very.
That's a different drop for us. We'll do a drop on that.
I think we will. I definitely think we will. We've talked about it a lot, and we've talked about it a lot over the years. I mean, under Mac, it was a story, and obviously goes back a lot further than that, which we've talked about. So, yeah, we wouldn't mind seeing a top 30 defense in Chapel Hill just to switch it up a little bit. We've been
how about some really these three things?
Switch it up.
The missing things from the Mac Brown era. A really, really good defense that's physical, can stop the 3rd and 1 and make it 3rd and a long one. Close the season strong. And have it beat NC State.
Yeah, you do those three things, you got a chance to, turn the ship around in Chapel Hill potentially. It's, it's like asking a lot.
Had Mac's teams done those things, Mac would still be the head coach.
You're absolutely right about that. You're 100% right about that, AJ, but they didn't do it. That's another drop for another day. I like that topic. We'll have to write that one down. We'll do that one at some point over the next few weeks, maybe a little bit closer.
Remind me when I'm walking, because I come up with some of the topics. This was your topic, and it's a great one. I'm glad you had brought it up a couple weeks ago, so I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about for a month. I wanted to compile some of the stuff, and hopefully it came off, well. So I know it's kind of annoying sometimes when I sit here and read notes for 20 minutes, but I don't have a photographic memory like AJ, so I can't just sit here and rattle stuff off like he can. But
I had to look at the notes too to make sure I didn't remember all of them.
Yeah. It's a lot, again, impressive and a lot of stuff to like, but we'll see what happens in Chapel Hill starting in a couple months. But again, I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones, another edition of our Daily Drop podcast series. We appreciate you watching. Like I said, get involved in the comments. Stay tuned. We'll have an announcement coming soon. Not exactly sure when yet, but we'll have one coming soon. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And if you want to,
it'll be.
Do you have any?
Well, I can't yet. August 1st is when practice starts, so it'll be by then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
don't get people. Why are y'all holding off? They think we're trying to build up, except we're really not. No. We're not allowed to say anything. We're not at liberty to say anything.
No. Yeah. No. We would have told you guys 2 weeks ago if we could. We ain't got no reason.
There's contractual stuff that we're dealing with here, so we're not allowed to.
Yeah. And that's exactly what's going on. So if you want to know what happens, when it happens, when we announce it, follow us on our socials. All of them are in the description below, and just subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube, because we'll obviously talk about it on a podcast as well. But again, we appreciate y'all watching. Get involved in the comments. See y'all next time. Thanks.